welcome to the show. My guest today is a lady I found on Facebook in a group. Uh, she posted one of her videos, and I liked what she was doing, so I reached out, and she's across the pond in England, and her name is Katie OMalley. Katie, how are you doing? Of
Hi, Phoenix. Thank you so much for having me.
course. Like I said, I found you and went through some of your other videos on YouTube and your Facebook page, but for the listeners, can you tell them all a little bit about yourself?
I'm a singer-songwriter that's from Manchester in the UK. And yeah, I've been writing songs for quite a while and singing for even longer. And yeah, now I have got a band around my music, and we're a five-piece band, and we gig all over the UK. I've not been to America, but something that I'd love to do. And it's funny because we have kind of Americana kind of sound.
Hmm.
It's very rootsy. It's a bit of a mixture of country, soul, folk, blues. It's got a bit of everything of all them rootsy kind of vibes, but you can definitely tell from the accent from how I sing that I'm not American.
You do, but you're very influenced by Americana music. I can tell in your
Yeah.
voice. You've got this really cool vibrato um, that stood out to me. It was something a little different, but there was soul there too. Like I said, I didn't pick up your accent or that you wasn't an American band until I messaged you and you told me. Um, and I was
Mm.
like, oh, this okay, cool. And then I could kind of hear it after that, but it stuck out to me, like I said, your vibrato. And was that something? What are some American artists that have kind of influenced your sound?
So the main band that really influenced me, I went to go watch a Jake Bugg concert, and there was this band supporting that I'd never heard of, and they were called Honey Honey. I don't know if you know them.
Oh my God, yes, I love Honey Honey.
I watched them, never heard of them before, and it was probably the only show I've been to where the support band was better than the main act. And
Yeah.
I was blown away. I just, and especially because I'd come to this point where I'd been writing songs that were quite folky, but like I love to belt and like really sing like from the gut and
Hmm.
sing all this soul music. And I was always quite torn between writing this like folky stuff with these airy melodies and but really wanting to sing out. And when I watched Susan Santo and how she sang, and I was like, she can do it. Like she's like built that bridge with
Hmm.
it, and I just loved it. So yeah, after I discovered them, I was obsessed. Listened to all the songs. I
Yeah.
literally had the same CD in my car for like 6 months, and that was all I listened to.
Well, yeah, I remember I found them on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and I started listening to their music as well. She was actually the first time I seen them. She was on Rogan with Gary Clark Jr. And I'm a fan
I
of Gary Clark. And of course, then I had to go to the YouTube deep dive and figure out who Suzanne Santos was. Because when I heard her, they had broke up for what, a year or two. Um, but yeah, I fell in love too. It was something a little bit different.
Yeah, definitely. It's just it's great how they do a similar thing in that they fuse a few genres together.
Hmm.
I feel like, and her voice is just amazing. It's really unique and soulful as well.
Yeah. And she's an incredible musician all around too.
Yeah,
She can play. What is it? I've seen her mandolin, violin, guitar, um,
banjo. Yeah,
banjo.
I was amazed by because it was just them two on stage, but they were creating such this big sound, and I was
Mhm.
like, wow.
And it's always fun to discover a band that, which they've been around a while. I don't know when you discovered them. Maybe it was only like a couple of years ago for me.
Um, what year would that have been? In like 2014, 15, I
Oh,
think.
okay. Okay, yeah, they've been out for a little while, but yeah, it's always really cool to find a new band that really changes your sound and what you want to do. Have you played music pretty much like your whole life, or was it something you picked up like
No,
teenage years or?
I was like really late to it. Never like sang from being little or anything like that. Because most people you meet, they're like, "Oh yeah, I always sang," or "I picked up the guitar when I was like 5," and that wasn't me at all.
Yeah,
Um, I got given this classical guitar when I was like 12, 13 by my uncle, this beaten up thing, and I tried to learn to teach myself. He gave me this book, and I don't know what it is with. I think when you're learning to read music, piano's a lot easier to learn on rather than
yeah.
guitar. Things like everywhere on the fretboard. And I tried it myself and I was just like, oh, I can't do this, and just put it down and gave up. And I'd always been into performance though. I was dancing from really little. I was always doing shows. So I was like, wasn't a stranger to like being in front of people. But um when I finally started getting into it really was I wanted to audition for the school play, and but I couldn't sing and you had to sing, and I went and did this audition and I sang and I got the main part, and it was Little Shop of Horrors. So I was playing Audrey and I was
That's cool.
so excited to do it. And then like the realization dawned on me that I was actually gonna have to sing in front of the whole school. And I was like, oh my God, um, I need to get some singing lessons. um, which I did, but they didn't really help me. And then I just started, I was listening, I'd always been brought up around music. Like I listened, my dad had like loads of soul and Motown on in the house from when I was little. I remember like on
Mhm.
Saturday, Sunday mornings, he would blast like music downstairs. So you come down to it being on. But it wasn't until I was like started like a teenager that I started to sing more, and then I started to like discover music more myself and what
Yeah.
I like. And then I started listening to more folky stuff like Bob Dylan, and just like fell in love with the whole lyrical side of things of
Mhm.
what people were writing about. And also just from already listening to all that soul music growing up, trying to sing like that too, and listening to Etta James and Janis Joplin, and yeah, I love belting it out. So yeah,
Yeah, well, again, I'm not too familiar with music scenes and stuff your way. Um, is Americana and folk music here, there's a following. Of course, let's talk pre-COVID. COVID flipped everything over. Um, but folk Americana, it has a following, but I don't know, it feels a lot more underground. Is it like that over there, or is it
yeah.
a more popular?
No, it's definitely an underground thing over here too. But it's I'd say in the last few years it started to get really popular,
Hmm.
and even though it's an underground thing, like the people that are fans of like country, Americana folk, they're really avid fans. Like
Yeah,
they're
they're
diehard.
loyal.
Yeah, and everyone seems to kind of know each other, and yeah, and it's quite a supportive network. So it's really nice where I see like because I started out around singing around in Manchester, and I was just doing the singer-songwriter stuff. It was just me and my guitar, and it was very different to the band scene, and I'd not really experienced that. And I actually think the singer-songwriter scene was is a bit more supportive here. Um, it's yeah, it's a little bit more friendlier, where it's a little bit more competitive, the band scene.
Hmm.
So, um, but yeah, it's definitely underground. But the past couple of years, I've seen a lot more country Americana kind of artists coming out.
And that's great.
Mm.
Me, I'm more recent into the folk Americana sound. Um, I grew up listening to rock and hard rock and then eventually metal, and I was in metal bands. Um, I was familiar with it. I grew up with different kinds of music. My parents, Prince, and everything from Prince and then Quiet Riot to Creedence Clearwater Revival. You know, it was a
Um, um,
Garth Brooks. When I was a kid, I used to dress up like Garth, and I could do I'd act out his shows for my family and stuff like that. I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and I'd acted out, and it was then I knew I wanted to perform, but I was like you, in the same that I didn't get into playing music until I was in my 20s before I ever started actually playing. I just do those little home dance gigs or whatever, mimicking. Um, and then through rock and metal, and as I've gotten older, I go back and I listen to. It started with like Credence again, and then it was I watched documentaries. There's a really one about the scene in Laurel Canyon in the '60s called "Echo in the Canyon."
oh,
Jacob Dylan directs it, uh, and it dives into the '60s folk scene with the Mamas and the Papas and um, the Birds, and it's really cool me now that I'm appreciating music in a different format, and singer songwriter I'm drawn to that as well, that just somebody creating for the love of it. They're telling a story, or it's not um what modern music is, modern
mm,
music, which I guess it's always been that way with pop and popular culture, that people are drawn to the quick taglines and stuff like that. But there's the songs that stood out to me, like Johnny Cash and Bob Dylan, that had something extra to go with it. It was a story or how they were feeling at the time.
mm, yeah.
I feel like a lot of times with folk bands, they get their appreciation is received years after what they've done.
Mm.
Because they're able to still transport you to that time. Um, when you write your lyrics and stuff, I mean, you try to write from personal experience, or do you try to, you know, capture what's going on in the world, or how do you approach lyrics?
I do a bit of both. I think I tend to write mostly kind of subconsciously. I don't sit down all the time knowing what I'm going to write about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sometimes things just kind of come, and if I'm humming along and then some lyrics come, and then I'll just stop and think, well, my my brain is trying to tell me something here, like, so what am I trying to tell myself? And sometimes it can be quite I want I don't know what to say. I was gonna say scary, but it is because it's like it's very truthful. Sometimes the things you come out, it's like that thing, when people they say like just write, you just
Mm-hmm.
write down a piece of paper and just write and see what comes out. It's the same with just like singing and creating melodies, and sometimes you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize, but yeah, I must feel like that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it can be yeah, sometimes it can be a little bit scary, the things that you come out with and you think, oh, I didn't realize I felt that way. But then there are other times that I wrote about more not specific incidents, but like with one of my songs, Wild West, I wrote it about just like gang culture in general. Um, Growing up like around Manchester, I'm from like North Manchester. It's when you're from a place, you don't really see it as being rough. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's just how it always is, and
Yeah.
it's just home to you. But when I'd had met other friends, they were like that weren't from around here. They were saying like, "Oh, I wouldn't walk the streets around Manchester on my own at night. Like it's a bit scary." And I'd be like, "Really?
Yeah.
Is
What?
it?" Because I just don't think anything of it, and especially when you play music and you're like, oh yeah, you just like grab your guitar and go like walk down the street with your guitar and you're
Hmm.
not bothered. Um, but yeah, one of my friends said that to me, and it made me think. And then at the time, there was like a lot of stabbings going on around in London, and then it started happening around Manchester. And I came home one night, and someone had been stabbed near the Arndale, which is at like our main shopping centre. My flat's like not too far from it, and they'd been stabbed outside there, and then they'd like ran across the street, and there was like this blood trail across the road to like right outside where my flat was, and that really made me think, yeah, it's
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird how that is that, especially with songs, people can manage to capture that. You said you could sit down and just write, and with no intention, you got a melody stuck in your head. And I'm gonna throw some lyrics. You start humming, and these feelings come out, and it's like you didn't realize you felt that way. Um, and it's something like you said, it is scary. It's like you said when where you grew up, you didn't see it that way at the time. You thought it was home, and somebody else on the outside looking in. That's what I think music has, that is allows people on the outside to kind of look in and see where you're coming from. And that's the kind of music that I like to try to attach to. The modern music just doesn't have that. The pop music.
No, it can be quite bland sometimes. There's not like a lot of content
Hmm.
there. Um, but I mean, everything can have its place, and
Sure.
sometimes um, people are singing along, and I mean, they don't even know what they're singing along to. They're just singing along because they like the melody or something. Or they're not even singing the right lyrics half the time. Like, oh, I thought, and I've done that before. I remember singing. It was actually some dance song, and it was like, it's called I Won't Look Back, but I kept saying walk the plank. I was like, I won't look back. Oh. I was like, walk the plank. I was like, why I thought it was about pirates or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, of course,
It's dingy. It's stretched. Oh, does it smell? It's so old. What is it? It's Carl's old bag. And now for your host, the Carl.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Carl's Old Bag. I'm a little bit in a hurry today. I'm heading out, and I need to get ready. So just bear with me. This is gonna be like a on-the-fly kind of episode. Out of my way, fucking cat. So today I'm gonna follow the same formula I did last week's episode. I'm gonna talk about an album that is classic or had an impact on me. And it is Dio, Sacred Heart from 1985. That's right. We'll take a shower. Dio, everybody who listened to this episode, to my episodes and the podcast knows that I'm a huge Ronnie James Dio fan. With whatever band he's in. Dio, Sacred Heart. I think it's the third album. Came out in 1985. I was on a trip with my soccer team at the time. We had an away game. Soccer, of course, is football, the rest of the world, so I'm going to say football from now on. So, we had a stop at some kind of a gas station, like a Love's or something like that, the Swedish variants. It's probably called Great Viking Food and Blonde Horse or something like that. I really don't remember. I was 15. All I cared about was heavy metal and Dungeons and Dragons, maybe. I don't know. Anyways, so everybody stopped and jumped out of the bus and got food and whatever, hot dogs. And I looked over and on the cassette display, I saw Dio, Sacred Heart. And I was like, what the hell is that? I didn't know, because back in the days, there was no like Google or Facebook and shit. You had to find out for yourself. You got to go to the store to see if there's anything else came out. And this was a surprise for me. So instead of eating a hot dog or soda or whatever, I spent all my money on a cassette. And it was Dio's Sacred Heart. And I remember I told the bus driver to, why don't you put this in the cassette player, and I listened to the whole album on the way home. It was fantastic. The first song, King of Rock and Roll, it's weird because it's a live recording. And it was just, I thought, what the hell is this? Is it a live album? And then, of course, the second song kicks in, Sacred Heart. And, yeah, oh my God. Hold on a second. Turn it. Still cold. Sacred Heart album, the song is fantastic. Ridiculously good. And for me, it's got a certain place in my heart. The way I don't know, first time experienced it. I was the only one into this shit in the whole team. And it was just listening to this, sitting on the bus. It was dark as hell back in the days, back in the old country in Sweden. And Sacred Heart came on, and the fourth song, Rock and Roll Children, is still one of my favorite songs from Dio. You have songs like A Beat of a Heart, Fallen Angels, and the last song, Shoot, Shoot. This album, to me, is fantastic. There is not one weak track on this album. Ronnie, of course, is a legend, and we all miss him. Solid albums. Damn, the first three albums from Dio, all of them are classic masterpieces in my opinion. And this is one of them. Sacred Heart from 1985. Wow, this is some good shit. Alright, boys and girls, I gotta jump in the shower. This was all from the Carl's Old Bag this week. Tune in again next week for another episode of the Phoenix Fire Podcast. and the host Chris Scott. See what he's got in his old bag. This is all for me today. Take it easy. See you next week. Rock on. Oh, god damn it, this shit's cold. Fuck me. That is some serious ribs. Oh. Oh.
In Manchester, you know, I know you said the folk scene is kind of like it is here. It's kind of underground and everything. But are there a lot of opportunities for people to play live, and are people going to see shows?
Yeah, and before COVID, like there was just always events. It's something on every night of the week in Manchester, definitely. And you've got like your staple places that it's for underground music. Places like the Castle Hotel, which is probably one of the loveliest places in Manchester to gig. It's only like super small. It's like max like 80 to 100. But it I always think it feels like you're stepping back in time when you go in there. It's all like wood floorboards and wood paneling, but it's got this like vaulted ceiling, which is all wood as well. So it just has this really nice sound. So if you play acoustic in there, it sounds lovely, and if there is a band in there as well, it sounds great. So it's just a really nice place to play, and I think a lot of people like that gig around Manchester. It's one of their favorite places to play too. But there are so many venues, and to say it's not that big of a place, there's a lot going on in it.
That's cool. Reason I asked is I know here where I'm from, we've got a couple big cities in our state, and we've started seeing venues close down. COVID took a couple more, but it was happening before where it was just people weren't going to shows anymore. Um, and I think it was our own scene issues. We still have bigger bands come through. We have smaller like the bigger club venues for acts that can sell 1,000, 800 to 1,000, and those places were still doing great, but local music and stuff was just weak in a weak area.
Yeah. No, yeah, we have that too. I mean, a lot's to be said for like promo these days, and how much like effort you put into doing all that, and who sees it on social media, because it does help, because I mean that's all people look at these days is the phones, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes like bands are put on gigs and they've not really promoted it at all. It's just they've got a gig, so then no one shows up. So but yeah, and I have been to nights, and sometimes you do feel bad for there's a really good band on and there's like less than 10 people there. It's sad.
Yeah.
But we have like this open mic night. It's like a booked open mic night that's quite like famous around, well, it's famous across like the whole of the UK now. And it's called the Whiskey Jar, the place, and it's on every Tuesday night, and people like come just for the music, which a lot of the time like there's an open mic night on and people are there just kind of for a drink more than anything, and there's an open mic on. But this is like people actually come to watch the open mic, and everyone is silent and super respectful, and it's really great to play.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
It's really good. You should check it. There's loads of videos online. I mean, it's not the same online, but
Yeah.
can't get like that feeling, but you get like a little taste of it. So yeah, if you wanted to check it out, it's called the Whiskey Jar in Manchester, and yeah, it's become like a staple place to play if you're on like the scene in Manchester. Everyone's played the Whiskey Jar.
Yeah. That's really cool. We have a couple places near where I'm from that were kind of like that. There's this we had this one place. It was called Sweat,
Mhm.
the Somewhere Else Tavern, and it was this tiny hole in the wall that you go in and it smells like rock and roll. Um, there's stickers everywhere over everything. The air condition didn't work. The bathrooms don't look like they've been cleaned since like 1974. Um, but it felt like you were a part of something. Those walls they breathed. They told a story. It's my favorite place to play, and it closed down a few years back. Um,
Wow.
the owners ran it for 40 years, and he was disabled and basically taking all the money that he made, which wasn't very much because he paid the bands whatever come through the door. Um, and anybody could play there any night of the week. And it just got to the point where they got a new landowner who raised their rent so much they couldn't afford, and they had to shut the doors. And it's sad to see places like that go. Um, so it's super cool to hear that those places are still alive. There's iconic. I'm sure you might have heard of some of the ones in the U.S. The Whiskey a Go Go. Um, there's one in New York too that I can't remember the name of. It's closed down. But there's those iconic places that the Ramones played, and during the '80s, Motley Crue, and everybody wanted to play the Whiskey. That was the dream. You made it when you got to play the Whiskey. You were a real band. Um, so it's cool to hear those places around other places too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what's kind of like missing these days in general though. Like back then, everything was like focused on live music
Hmm.
and just like word of mouth and people going out to watch live bands and saying like, yeah, they were really good. Where that's the one thing that social media is great. Like it can like open your eyes to like to people and you'll find people that you never knew existed. But I feel it's kind of taken that spark away a little bit. Like
Yeah.
and because like everything's on your phone, you could just like you can find someone and listen to the music. People probably aren't going out as much, like you were saying before, like with places where there weren't as many people coming to shows. Like you at that point back like 20 years ago, you would have to go out to see a live music. You wouldn't just find it on your
Yeah.
phone. So
I'm
yeah,
hoping
that's
I'm hoping COVID kind of changes that because I know here, um, they've started lifting restrictions and letting people gather smaller groups. Um, and there's been such a hunger. People want to see live music so bad, and I'm hoping that that's enough spark that people will take it more serious. I feel like everybody took it for granted.
yeah, definitely. I took it for granted myself. Like I live in like the centre of Manchester and you do take it for granted because you live in town. You're like, oh, I can go out any night I want, and then you don't.
Yeah.
So um yeah, I'm definitely gonna go out and watch more music myself. So I think sometimes you forget that when you're playing it, that you forget to go out and like consume it as much. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's one.
Is there any bands that you got into during the whole COVID thing? Newer bands that or artists that you discovered?
Um, I got into Cult of Wall. I'd not seen him before,
Hmm.
but I discovered him, and then I discovered that Dave Cobb produced him, who also produces Honey Honey, which I
Oh,
didn't
no
realize.
way.
Yeah, so because there's something about the sound of it, and I was like, it sounds so cool. And then when I looked up, who the producer was, I was like, that is so weird. Like,
Yeah, that's really cool. I've been listening to Rival Sons. They're out of Tennessee.
oh, okay. I don't
Um,
know.
they're a little more dirty rock and roll, Led
Yeah.
Zeppelin.
Cool.
I seen them years and years ago. Well, not that long. It was like 2015. Open for Black Sabbath. And I was like, okay, they're really cool. I went to see Sabbath, and I didn't know who this band was, and I thought, okay, they were cool, but I wasn't into that kind of music. And now it's
Mm.
like I'm mad at myself because I want to see them live so bad because I just discovered them for myself, and it's like I saw them and I took it for granted, you know, I didn't know who they were.
It's funny, isn't it? Like, yeah, you want to discover things for yourself sometimes, even though it can be like put in front of you.
Hmm.
It's it's mad. Yeah, you want to find it yourself.
Yeah, I think I've seen somewhere that I know Honey Honey's working on new stuff together because I heard her, Suzanne, and I can't think of the guitar player's name or piano drummer. He plays everything too, but I know they were talking about releasing some new music.
Yeah, I heard that too. But I love Susan's solo stuff because it that was a bit more like rockier,
Hmm.
and I love that she went a bit harder for it because it suits her.
Yeah, yeah. It's she does the stuff with Gary Clark Jr. and this, you know, he's a lot more. He's got that R&B and then that dirty rock and roll kind of sound too. She's very versatile. She can do anything. Are you having any when you're writing your songs, newer stuff, working on your album and stuff like that, and during COVID, have you changed your sound up any?
Yeah, I mean, well, just in general, from getting the band behind me, it's changed because obviously I had all like my singer-songwriter kind of stuff, which I brought to the band, but when I started writing more, I was like, well, I can really go for it now. I've got this big band behind me. So yeah, it's a little bit more rockier. As and still sometimes like I'll write a song when something folky still comes out. It's just like whatever you're feeling at the time. But I'm wanting to write more stuff that like will suit them, like heavier guitars. And yeah, I'm excited for it because that's the kind of stuff that you want to play live and that people want to hear
Yeah.
live. They
Hmm.
want to dance to and they want to really get into. So and but at the same time, like I find it quite hard to be like put in this box because like I was saying, like I just write whatever comes out. So I'm quite happy having like quite like a set that's like a bit up and down. Um, but it's just if like people can understand that and I think that to me is what a songwriter is like. It's writing songs no matter what the genre is really. It's just how you feel at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that's one good thing about playing in a band is that it gives you the opportunity to tap into a tool that lets you do something you're not used to doing yourself. You know, playing metal guitar, you know, you get with other metal guitarists, they may listen to this style of metal and I listen to this style, and it's cool to kind of blend and create new sounds that I couldn't. I was like, oh, I never thought about approaching a song that way. Um, the guys that you play with, they contribute a lot to the songs as well, and you know, challenge you.
Yeah. Um, yeah. They well, I've had quite a few guitarists now, but it's quite interesting to
Okay, yeah,
see
they challenge you then.
to see the different styles that they play. At the minute, the the guy that I've got, he was very like Oasis inspired,
Hmm.
um, but still like quite, I don't know, like Thin Lizzy inspired as well at the same time. He got
Yeah.
that like 70s rock kind of vibe going on. But you can still do a bit of like the country kind of thing at the same time. And sometimes I've been trying to push him more to like do like bluesier riffs. 'Cause I've been listening to a lot of Allman Brothers,
Hmm.
and I just think that the guitars in it are just amazing. Like you just don't think you can get much better in my opinion. But so I've been trying to like push him to do more of that, because sometimes when things come out, like when you have that 70s rock thing, it can sometimes come out a little bit cheesy, um and like overdone. So yeah, trying to yeah, keep it more rootsy sounding.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I mean, like I said, it gives you opportunity to play around and musicians challenge each other and grow
Yeah,
your
well,
sound.
I'm not a musician at all. Like I just I I wouldn't class myself as a musician, and I let the lads like do their thing, because I don't really, I'm not like very musically inclined really. I just
But you
like
are. I mean, you have
that.
melody. You can
Yeah.
sing. It's still a part of it. It's like saying the Beatles weren't musicians because most of their songs are just three chords. Of course they're musicians. It, music doesn't. I don't think music has to be something that's so like serious at
Mm.
all the times. Sometimes some of the greatest artists and the greatest songs come from three chords and a cheesy melody. I mean, you tell me the Beatles melodies aren't cheesy when you think about it. I mean, they're super
Especially the
cheesy.
early stuff, yeah.
Yeah. Um, but it worked.
Yeah.
It makes great songs, and um, it's a formula that's still used today. And I think that even as like you said, if you may feel like, well, I'll let them do the music thing, but you put the stamp on it too. The sound is it's all the sounds together,
Mm.
that make the songs. And I think it's really cool that you started as a singer songwriter and you have a band now and you're enjoying the band aspect of it and you just want to play. You just want to get out there, you just want to play. You're doing it for the love of music and that's rare. So many
It's
people are caught up in how many Spotify links, I mean, how many Spotify plays can I get? And it's just like I just want to play.
yeah. And it is easy to get caught up in that, but
Sure.
what's it's like it doesn't mean anything really, because sometimes you think you look and you're like, oh, it's only had like this many plays, but like what does it matter? Just because it's had less plays and another song, it doesn't mean that it's any less of a song. It
No,
it just it just hasn't reached as many people. It's not nothing to do with the quality of the song.
absolutely. I couldn't have said that better. That's perfect explanation. I mean, the whole society has gotten that way. It's about the likes and the shares, and no, it's about the music. And I think that's why people got disconnected from live shows. And you know, like I said, I hope maybe now COVID people will start appreciating artists and creativity.
I hope so.
And I'm hoping there's a lot of people that come out, lit up and inspired that get back out and we're getting music, so much music we can't handle it. I know a few of my favorite bands have albums coming, and I'm really excited. Um, so everybody that's chipping in, creating, it's going to be fun. I think to get back out there and on both ends, from fan perspective and from performers. Has has Manchester started opening back up for shows?
Um, Not yet. No, we've apparently the 17th of May is when we can start actually performing again.
Okay.
So it's still a bit away yet. But it's gonna the 12th of April is when like just like shops open and bars and restaurants can open, and then it's not till later that they can have performers. But I know that there are some places, there's stuff going through the courts that are trying to challenge that, because now that we've got the vaccine and we've vaccinated like a lot of people here in the UK now, the risk is like a lot less. So I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But it doesn't mean that you can't be creative. And I actually think um having the break from the gigs has made me more creative, because sometimes you're so like involved in the gigging that it's like you're just focusing on the next gig and practice, and that takes away from you doing the writing, or I don't know, creating like whatever content you want to create, a video or whatever, or even if it's just a cover or something. And I've found that I've been so much more creative and like collaborating with people, and like I've actually like properly started recording at home, because I've done it before and uh, I just couldn't I couldn't do it. I'm not very good with technology. Like you see me when I came on this, like I couldn't even get my mic to work. So like, that's just me all over. And I find the whole technology thing like quite a hard thing to do. So but I've managed to like do quite a lot of like home recording myself, which I'm super proud of myself for. Yeah.
Congratulations. It's a very useful tool when you get it down.
Yeah. And I don't like, I'm not amazing at it. I can get by on it, but I've been like, actually researching things and finding out I've got Pro Tools now, and I'm like figuring out good ways to do stuff. So yeah, it's a good skill to have.
Yeah, I I know I can spit. I'm a riff writing machine. That's what I do best is write riffs. I suck at writing lyrics. I suck at writing everything else, but I can write riffs. And a lot of times I'll play 30 riffs and I'll forget 29 of them, you know. So having press record and then I'll play riffs and then I can go back and pick later. Just being
Mhm.
able to have it to listen to, even if it's just using voice recorder on your phone.
Yeah, that's why like I've lived by is my voice recorder on my phone.
It saves the day.
It does.
I can't think
But
of how many times I've picked up mine and I have a riff idea and go ba da 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 da, you know, and save that. When I get home, okay, that's what it was.
but that's what I found frustrating, is that because I've always done the phone thing, like the simplicity of it, when like you give me more than one thing to do or plug in, my brain just like falls apart. Like, oh, too many things, too many buttons, too many things to remember.
Yeah,
But,
I thought technology was supposed to make things easier. And it feels
yeah.
like it's getting harder because it's so in depth. Well, um, Katie, thank you so much for doing the show. It was a
Thank you.
pleasure to meet you and a pleasure to talk to you.
You
Um,
too.
the show, I will send you links to the show whenever it'll drop this coming Wednesday. And but before we go out, tell all the listeners where to find you, your social media links, YouTube. I'll put them down in the description, but use this chance to plug you and what you do.
Uh, yeah, so it's my name is Katie O'Malley. O'Malley, like the Aristocats Disney film, if you've seen that. You can find me on Facebook. It's Katie O'Malley Music. Instagram, Katie O'Malley X, and YouTube, Katie O'Malley Music as well, and Spotify. Yeah, again, just Katie O'Malley.
Okay, great. Like I said, I'll put links to everything in the description of the show. It'll be available on YouTube and all the podcast platforms. Um, again, thank you for doing the show, and keep the music coming. And I'll share it as I see it.
Oh, thank you.
Uh, take care, Katie, and bye, everybody.